Don't move. You're in danger.
There are moments when your life fractures into before and after. Mine happened over a bottle of Amarone and a whispered warning I almost didn't give. Francesca, your gentleman is waiting. Sophia's teasing voice barely registered as I polished wine glasses, my reflection distorted in the chrome. My gentleman. If she only knew how those two words made my pulse stumble. Massimo Corvetti wasn't my anything. He was just a customer. A devastatingly dangerous, impossibly magnetic customer who'd been requesting my section every Friday for 6 months. A customer I was about to save from an assassination attempt I wasn't even sure was real. Rain hammered the glass walls of La Verita, turning the city outside into a blur of neon and shadow. Sophia passed behind me again, this time with less patience. Table 11 needs their second bottle of Chianti. And seriously, Francesca, stop overthinking. The man tips 40% and looks like he walked off a magazine cover. What's the problem? The problem was that everything about Massimo Corvetti triggered every instinct my abandoned psychology degree had sharpened. Not the kind that screamed run, though maybe it should have, but the kind that whispered watch him, study him, understand what he's hiding. My training had taught me to read the silent language people spoke through micro-expressions and unconscious tells, and Massimo spoke volumes in a dialect I was still desperately trying to translate. No problem, I lied, smoothing my black server's apron. At 25, I'd learned that survival in hospitality meant projecting calm competence even when your instincts were screaming. The dining room carried its usual Friday rhythm, anniversary couples, business deals, weekend celebrations. But tonight something felt wrong. I'd first sensed it around 11, when a man in a dark tailored suit claimed table 7. Nothing unusual, except he'd ordered 2 glasses of wine in 40 minutes without drinking either one. He sat with shoulders locked, checking his watch with mechanical precision. What made my stomach tighten was his positioning. Table 7 offered an unobstructed view of the window seat. Massimo's seat. Then there was the one at the bar, late 30s, expensive shoes, nursing the same scotch for nearly an hour. He'd positioned himself with clear sight lines to both the entrance and the back corridor. The way he kept adjusting his jacket suggested he was carrying something he didn't want noticed. A third man had taken the corner table near the restrooms 15 minutes ago, prime real estate for monitoring the rear exit. The route I'd noticed Massimo always took when leaving. This one was younger, restless, constantly checking his phone and tapping silent rhythms against his thigh. Pre-action anxiety. My psychology training recognized it instantly: elevated breathing, repetitive gestures, hypervigilance. All markers of people steeling themselves for something significant. I grabbed the bottle of Amarone Massimo always ordered and crossed toward the window. He looked up as I approached, those slate-gray eyes conducting their usual assessment. Everything about Massimo Corvetti was controlled, calculated. 6'2" of barely contained intensity wrapped in Italian wool. "Good evening, Mr. Corvetti," I said, grateful my voice didn't shake. "Your usual tonight? Please." That voice, low, textured, carrying an accent I'd never been able to place. It held an undertone of command that made even simple requests sound like orders. As I poured, I catalogued details I'd unconsciously collected for months. The way he always sat with his back to the wall, how his eyes swept the room in methodical patterns, the faint scar along his jaw disappearing into his beard, the subtle bulge beneath his left shoulder. "You seem distracted tonight, Francesca." His observation was quiet. "Something troubling you?" Before I could answer, the man at table 7 pulled out his phone, speaking in urgent whispers. I caught fragments as I pretended to examine the wine label. 23:45. Back exit. Everyone's in position. My blood crystallized. 23:45 was 12 minutes from now. The back exit was the route Massimo always used. And everyone's in position confirmed what I'd feared. 3 men. Strategic positions. 1 timeline. 1 target. Hey friend, before we continue, kindly subscribe to Undiluted Love Stories. It's 1 second for you but a big deal for me. Now, let's get back into the story. "Mr. Corvetti," I said quietly, leaning forward as if adjusting his napkin. My hand lightly gripped his forearm. "I might be completely wrong, but I think you need to listen very carefully and not move." His hand stilled on the wine glass. Those gray eyes sharpened like a blade finding its edge. Something's planned for 11:45. The back exit. I kept my voice steady. 3 men. All watching you. All armed, I think. All waiting. The man who never blinked, blinked. Tell me where, he murmured, gaze fixed on the window's rain-streaked reflection. I described each position, table 7, the bar, the restrooms. His jaw tightened with each detail. How long? He asked. I glanced at the clock. 10 minutes. Molto bene. His voice dropped to something ancient and cold. Francesca, when I stand, you walk toward the kitchen. You don't look back. Understand? But. Movement exploded across the dining room before I could finish. The man at table 7 rose, hands sliding inside his jacket. But he wasn't looking at Massimo, he was staring at me, his expression shifting to panic as he realized I'd warned his target. Then 3 things happened simultaneously. Massimo's hand shot out, pulling me behind him as he stood. A suppressed gunshot cracked through the sound of rain, the wine bottle on the table exploding in a shower of glass and Amarone. And 2 men I'd never noticed, positioned near the kitchen, dressed in server uniforms, moved with lethal precision, weapons appearing in their hands like magic. Screams erupted. Chairs overturned. Diners dove beneath tables. But Massimo moved with inhuman calm, one arm locked around my waist, shielding me as a second shot whistled past, embedding into the wall where his head had been seconds earlier. His voice thundered across the chaos, "Take them alive." The fight lasted seconds. 2 attackers were disarmed. One, the younger one from the restrooms, slipped out the back door. Massimo's grip on my wrist was iron. We need to go. Now. I can't just leave my shift. You saved my life. His eyes locked onto mine with frightening intensity. That means your life is now tied to mine. And those men who escaped? They saw your face, Francesca. They know you warned me. Rain drenched us the moment we stepped outside. A black sedan screeched to a stop, rear door already open. Get in. I hesitated. Every logical thought screamed don't. But then I saw something in Massimo's expression shift, not softening exactly, but something close to concern. You warned me, he said quietly. No one has ever warned me. I climbed into the sedan. And as the car pulled away from La Verita, from my normal life, from everything I'd known, I understood with perfect clarity. Francesca Morelli, the girl who never wanted attention, had just become the most dangerous person in Massimo Corvetti's world. Not because of what I knew, but because of what I'd done. The sedan's leather seats smelled like expensive cologne and danger. Massimo sat across from me, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian to someone on the other end. His free hand rested on his knee, fingers drumming a pattern that looked casual but felt calculated, like everything else about him. I watched the city blur past rain-streaked windows, my mind still caught in the chaos we'd left behind. Glass shattering. Screams. The methodical efficiency of Massimo's hidden security team. The look on that attacker's face when he realized I'd ruined everything. Where are we going? My voice sounded smaller than I intended. Massimo ended his call. Somewhere safe. Safe for who? His eyes met mine, and something flickered there, approval maybe. Honestly? I'm not sure yet. The answer should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like the first truthful thing anyone had said to me all night. We drove for 20 minutes, weaving through the city's financial district until the car descended into an underground garage beneath a gleaming high-rise. Armed men in dark suits materialized from the shadows, their eyes scanning the vehicle before one nodded to Massimo. This way, sir. Ms. Moretti is cleared. Ms. Moretti. They already knew my name. The private elevator climbed 47 floors in silence. When the doors opened, I stepped into a world that felt like beautiful imprisonment. The penthouse sprawled before me, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's glittering skyline, modern furniture in shades of black and gray, art that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. But beneath the luxury, I noticed the reinforced glass, the security cameras positioned at every angle, the subtle panic buttons embedded in the walls. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress. Francesca Moretti. A woman's voice cut through my observations, cool, professional, assessing. She emerged from a side corridor, late 30s, designer suit, tablet in hand. Everything about her screamed efficiency. I'm Sofia Romano, Mr. Corvetti's executive assistant. Your manager at La Verita has been informed you're taking emergency medical leave. Severe migraine. Very convincing, apparently. My stomach dropped. You called my job? Of course. She tapped her tablet. We've also had your apartment secured, your mail forwarded, and your phone calls rerouted. Standard protocol when someone enters Mr. Corvetti's protection. I didn't ask for protection. You saved his life. Sofia's expression didn't change. That automatically qualifies you for concerns we'd rather not leave unaddressed. She moved closer, and I caught the scent of her perfume, something French and expensive. We've prepared the guest suite. Second door on the left. Your size is 6, correct? We've stocked appropriate clothing. You prefer minimal jewelry, avoid red tones, and take your coffee with cream, no sugar. The room tilted slightly. How do you know? Ms. Moretti, we've been aware of you for quite some time. The casual way she said it, like surveillance was as normal as checking the weather, made my lungs constrict. The walls seemed to press closer. Those beautiful windows became bars. My breath came shorter, faster. Sofia. Massimo's voice carried warning. Give us the room. She left without argument, heels clicking against marble. I backed toward the windows, hands shaking. You've been watching me? For how long? Why didn't you? The words tangled. My psychology training recognized the symptoms: panic attack, hyperventilation, fight or flight response. Breathe, Francesca. Massimo approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. I need you to breathe. Don't tell me to breathe. You've been watching me, you knew about the attack my vision spotted at the edges. He guided me to the leather sofa, his touch surprisingly gentle. Sit. Head between your knees. That's it. I followed the instructions mechanically, my psychology degree providing the script even as panic tried to override it. Slowly, my breathing steadied. When I finally looked up, Massimo was pouring water from a crystal decanter. He handed me the glass and sat across from me, not close enough to crowd, but near enough to catch me if I collapsed. I'm going to show you something, he said quietly. And then you're going to understand why your life was never as normal as you believed. He pulled out his phone, tapped several times, then turned the screen toward me. Security footage. Multiple angles. Different dates. All featuring the same subject, me. Walking to my apartment 3 weeks ago, a man in a gray jacket following 20 paces behind. Leaving the library 2 weeks ago, a different man, this one with a camera, positioned across the street. Getting coffee last week, someone bumping into me, hand briefly touching my purse. Who are they? My voice came out hoarse. Surveillance teams. Not mine. Massimo's jaw tightened. Someone has been circling you for over a month, Francesca. Learning your patterns. Identifying your vulnerabilities. But why? I'm nobody. I'm just. You're the waitress I requested every Friday for 6 months. The only person I spoke to outside my organization. The only woman who made me. He paused, something raw flickering across his face before his control reasserted itself. They noticed what I tried very hard to hide. The implications settled over me like ice water. You're saying I was already a target? Before tonight? Yes. Because of you? Because someone inside my organization recognized that you'd become important to me. And they planned to use you to destroy me. I stood, needing to move, to think. This is insane. I don't know anything about your world. I can't identify anyone. Actually, Massimo interrupted, you can. That's exactly why I need you. He pulled up another image. A photograph of a man, late 30s, expensive suit, familiar smile. This is my cousin, Lorenzo Corvetti. We grew up together. He's been my right hand for 12 years. Something in his voice made me look closer at the photograph. And that's when I saw it, the micro-expression my training had taught me to recognize. The subtle tension around the eyes. The controlled smile that didn't reach his gaze. Deception. Guilt. Fear. The man who escaped tonight, I whispered. The young one from the restrooms. Was following Lorenzo's orders. Yes. My legs felt weak. Your own cousin tried to kill you? Not just kill me, Francesca. He planned to kidnap you first. Use you as leverage to force me to step down. And when I refused, because I would have refused, he would have killed you in front of me. Then killed me. And taken control of everything I've built. The clinical detachment in his voice didn't match the fury burning behind his eyes. I sank back onto the sofa, my mind racing through everything I knew about behavioral analysis, about reading people, about the tells that revealed truth from lies. Massimo leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked almost vulnerable. Your psychology training, your ability to read people, it's not just impressive, Francesca. It's rare. Invaluable. And right now, it might be the only thing that keeps both of us alive. I don't understand. Lorenzo didn't act alone. There are others inside my organization. People I trust. People I've known for years. And I need to know who they are before they strike again. The weight of what he was asking settled on my shoulders. You want me to, what? Interrogate your entire organization. I want you to watch them. Read them. Tell me who's lying. His voice dropped to something almost pleading. You saw 3 men in a crowded restaurant and identified a coordinated assassination attempt in minutes. Imagine what you could do with time and access. I should have said no. Should have demanded he take me home, damn the consequences. But then I remembered the man following me 3 weeks ago. The photographer. The casual bump that might have been someone planting a tracker. I'd been living in a target without knowing it. And Massimo, dangerous, criminal, impossible Massimo, had been the one trying to protect me. I have one question, I said finally. He waited. If I do this, if I help you identify who betrayed you, what happens to them? His expression went cold. Arctic. That depends on who they are and what they've done. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. We stared at each other across the coffee table, waitress and mafia boss, psychologist and predator, the woman who'd saved his life and the man who'd irrevocably changed hers. Finally, Massimo stood and moved to the window, his silhouette framed against the city lights. Francesca, he said quietly, not turning around. Based on everything you've observed about me, my behavior, my patterns, my tells, answer me honestly. He turned then, and his eyes held a question that felt like falling. Who do you think betrayed me? The question hung in the air between us like a blade suspended by thread. Who do you think betrayed me? I wanted to say I didn't know, that I couldn't possibly answer based on one photograph and a stranger's word. But Massimo's eyes held mine with an intensity that demanded honesty. I don't have enough data, I said finally. But Lorenzo's not the only one. When people plan betrayals this elaborate, they rarely work alone. He needed inside information, your schedule, your routines, your security protocols. Something flickered across Massimo's face. Approval, maybe. Or resignation. Come with me. He led me through the penthouse to a door I hadn't noticed before, reinforced steel disguised as decorative paneling. His palm print unlocked it, revealing a staircase descending into what I could only describe as a command center. Monitors lined the walls, displaying security feeds from dozens of locations. 3 men worked at computer stations, their faces illuminated by blue screen glow. They barely glanced up as we entered. Conference room 2, Massimo told one of them. Bring up the interrogation feeds. We moved into a smaller room dominated by a massive monitor. Massimo tapped a remote, and the screen divided into 3 sections, each showing a different man in a stark interrogation room. The 2 attackers from the restaurant, and a third I didn't recognize. They were taken to a secure location an hour ago, Massimo explained. They haven't spoken. Yet. I studied each face carefully. The men sat in identical postures, hands cuffed to tables, shoulders rigid, eyes fixed on opposite walls. But their micro-expressions told different stories. The man on the left, jaw clenched, breathing shallow, sweat beading at his temples despite the cool room. Classic fear response. The middle one, fingers drumming against the metal table in an erratic pattern, eyes darting to the door every few seconds. Anxiety mixed with anticipation. He was expecting something. Or someone. The right, completely still, almost meditative. But his pupils were dilated, his throat working in small repetitive swallows. Terror masked by training. I watched them for 5 minutes in silence, cataloging every twitch, every unconscious gesture. Then I saw it. The two on the right, I said quietly. They keep looking up. Just for a fraction of a second, but it's consistent. Every 45 seconds or so. Massimo leaned closer to the screen. Up where? I don't know. But it's the same direction each time. Same angle. It's not random, it's a trained response. Like they're checking something. Or remembering something they were told to remember. Could be looking at a clock. These rooms don't have clocks. I pointed to the timestamps in the corners of each feed. And the pattern is too precise. This is muscle memory. Someone drilled this into them. Massimo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression went absolutely cold. The one on the left just started talking. He's asking for witness protection in exchange for information. He looked at me. He says Lorenzo Corvetti promised them €50,000 each. 25,000 up front, 25 upon completion. Completion of what? Your kidnapping. My execution. His voice was clinical, detached. In that order. The room felt smaller suddenly. He's telling the truth about Lorenzo? Every word. We verified the deposits. Lorenzo used an offshore account we didn't know he had. I forced myself to focus. Can I see footage from the restaurant? From before the attack? Massimo nodded, tapping the remote. The interrogation feeds disappeared, replaced by security camera footage from La Verita. The timestamp read 22:47, nearly an hour before the shooting. There. I pointed as a figure entered frame. That's the man from the bar. Watch him. We watched as the man took his position, ordered his drink, settled into surveillance mode. But then, at 23:12, his phone lit up. He glanced at it, and his entire posture shifted. Shoulders squared. Jaw set. He just received confirmation, I said. Someone texted him the final go-ahead. Massimo was already typing on his phone. I'm having our tech team pull cell tower data from that time frame. It won't be Lorenzo's phone, I told him. He's too smart for that. Then whose? I turned back to the screen, my mind working through the behavioral patterns, the coordination, the inside knowledge required to plan something this sophisticated. Whoever texted that final confirmation had access to real-time information about your location. They knew you were at the restaurant. They knew you'd be leaving at your usual time. They knew which exit you'd use. That describes half my inner circle. No. I shook my head. It describes someone who was there. Or had access to someone who was there. Massimo went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying Lorenzo needed eyes on the ground. Someone in that restaurant. Someone watching you the whole time. He pulled up different footage, wide-angle shots of the entire dining room. We scanned faces, tables, movements. And then I saw him. A man in a server's uniform, mid-30s, positioned near the kitchen. One of the two servers who defended Massimo during the attack. The ones I'd assumed were his security team. But in this earlier footage, at 23:38, he was on his phone. Just for 3 seconds. His lips moved silently, and then he slipped the phone back into his pocket and resumed his position. Go back, I said. Zoom in on his face during that call. Massimo complied. The image enlarged, grainy but clear enough. The man's expression, that's what caught me. The micro-expression that lasted less than a second but told me everything I needed to know. Guilt. Shame. Fear. And something else. Resignation. Like a man who'd already accepted he was damned. That's not a security guard, I whispered. That's your traitor. He called someone at 23:38. 7 minutes before the attack. My guess? He was confirming you were still at the table. Still on schedule. Massimo's hand gripped the remote so hard I heard plastic crack. His name is Marco Ricci. He's been with me for 8 years. I trust him with my life. Trusted, I corrected softly. Past tense. He stared at the frozen image, and I watched emotions war across his face. Betrayal, fury, something that looked almost like grief. You're certain? I rewound the footage, played it again. Watch his eyes after he makes the call. He looks directly at you. And for just a moment, his expression changes. That's not the look of a guard protecting his boss, Massimo. That's the look of a man saying goodbye. The silence that followed felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane. Finally, Massimo pressed a button on the wall. Bring Marco Ricci to interrogation room 4. Tell him I need to discuss tonight's security breakdown. Tell him to come alone. He turned to me, and his eyes held something I hadn't seen before, absolute trust and absolute danger intertwined. When Marco arrives, I want you in the observation room. I want you watching every breath he takes, every word he says. And Francesca. His voice dropped to something ancient and cold. I need you to tell me if I'm about to execute an innocent man, or a traitor who helped my cousin try to kill us both. The weight of what he was asking settled on my shoulders like stones. I'd been a waitress 12 hours ago. Now I was deciding who lived and who died. I'll tell you the truth, I promised. Whatever it is. Then let's see how loyal Marco Ricci really is. And as we climbed back upstairs to watch a man I'd just condemned face his reckoning, I realized something terrifying. I was becoming part of Massimo's world. And I wasn't sure I wanted to leave. Marco Ricci walked into interrogation room 4 at 2:47 a.m. like a man attending his own funeral. I watched from behind the one-way glass as he took the seat across from Massimo. Even through the grainy feed, I could see the tells I'd learned to recognize, the slight tremor in his hands as he placed them on the table, the way his eyes couldn't quite hold Massimo's gaze, the throat clearing that happened twice in the first 30 seconds. Guilt. Fear. Resignation. Marco. Massimo's voice came through the speakers with deadly calm. Tell me about tonight. It was coordinated, Marco began, his words rehearsed, professional. 3 attackers, likely hired contractors. We neutralized 2, 1 escaped. Standard security protocols were. Who did you call at 23:38? Marco froze. Just for a heartbeat. But I saw it, the micro-expression that confirmed everything. I don't recall making any calls during. Try again. The temperature in both rooms seemed to drop simultaneously. Marco's composure cracked like thin ice. Massimo, I can explain. The door to the observation room burst open. Sofia Romano stood in the doorway, tablet abandoned, hair disheveled, the first time I'd seen her anything less than perfectly composed. We have a breach. North perimeter. 2 vehicles. Armed personnel. Massimo was moving before she finished speaking. How many? At least 6. They're using the service entrance. They knew the access codes. I followed them into the command center, my heart hammering. The monitors showed grainy night vision footage of men in tactical gear moving through the underground garage with practiced precision. They're coming for Marco, Massimo said, his mind already 3 steps ahead. Lorenzo knows we have him. He's cutting his losses. Or he's coming for something else, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. Marco made that call 7 minutes before the restaurant attack. That's not a confirmation, that's too early. He was telling someone else. Someone who needed time to mobilize. Massimo's eyes sharpened. He was setting up a contingency. If the restaurant attack failed, Lorenzo needed another play. And Marco just told him exactly where we are. I felt the pieces clicking together with sickening clarity. They're not here to extract Marco. They're here to finish what they started. An explosion shook the building. The lights flickered. Alarms screamed. Emergency protocols activated automatically, steel shutters slamming down over windows, security doors locking, backup power kicking in. Get her to the safe room, Massimo ordered, already moving toward the weapons locker. No. The word came out before I could stop it. If they're here for me, hiding just delays the inevitable. Francesca. You need to evacuate your wounded. I pointed to the monitors showing the garage. Your driver from the restaurant, Carlo, right? He was hit during the extraction. He's in the medical bay, 2 floors down. If they breach this level, he's defenseless. Massimo hesitated, torn between protection and tactics. I'll take 2 guards and get Carlo to the armored vehicle, Sofia said. You secure the primary exit route. I'm coming with you, I said. Absolutely not. I'm the smallest, fastest, and the only one they won't expect. You need every gun protecting Massimo. I can help move Carlo. Sofia looked at Massimo. Something passed between them, a conversation in glances that spoke of years of trust and shared survival. Stay behind Sofia at all times, Massimo finally said, his voice rough. You do exactly what she tells you. Understand? I nodded. He crossed the distance between us in 3 strides, his hand cupping my face with surprising gentleness. Don't be brave, Francesca. Just survive. Then he was gone, shouting orders, coordinating his team with military precision. Sofia grabbed my arm. Stay close. Don't speak. If shooting starts, you drop and stay down. We moved through the penthouse's hidden corridors, service passages I hadn't known existed. 2 guards flanked us, weapons drawn. The building shook again. Closer this time. The medical bay was exactly where Sofia said, a sterile room filled with equipment that looked more surgical suite than first aid station. Carlo lay on a gurney, conscious but pale, bandages wrapped around his shoulder. We're moving you, Sofia told him. That's when the lights went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, dim red bulbs that turned everything into a horror film. And in that crimson glow, I saw movement at the far door. Not our guards. Someone else. Down. Sofia screamed, pulling me behind the gurney as gunfire erupted. The 2 guards returned fire. The enclosed space turned into a war zone, muzzle flashes, the deafening crack of weapons, Carlo crying out as Sofia and I tried to drag the gurney toward the exit. 1 guard dropped. Then the other. Sofia's weapon clicked empty. And then rough hands grabbed me from behind, yanking me away from the gurney with brutal efficiency. Got her, a voice shouted. North stairwell, moving now. I fought, kicking, clawing, remembering every self-defense principle I'd ever learned. But whoever held me knew what they were doing. Within seconds, I was zip-tied, a bag over my head, being hauled through corridors I couldn't see. Voices surrounded me, distorted through the fabric. Lorenzo wants her alive. Conscious. He's got questions. What about Corvetti? Let him come. That's the whole point. I forced myself to breathe, to think, to analyze. 3 distinct voices. Heavy footsteps, military boots on concrete. The smell of gunpowder and something else, diesel fuel. We were in the garage. Vehicles ready. Warehouse district, just like he said. They were taking me somewhere Lorenzo could use me as leverage. Somewhere isolated. Somewhere Massimo would have to come alone. I was bait. But bait could still bite. As they shoved me into a vehicle, van, based on the height and interior space, I started cataloging everything. The number of turns. The time between stops. The voices and their cadences. Every detail my psychology training had taught me to observe. Left turn. 45 seconds of straight driving. Right turn. Stop sign. I counted heartbeats, tracked patterns, built a mental map. And I listened. The youngest captor was nervous. I could hear it in his breathing, the way his foot tapped against the van's floor. Anxiety he was trying to hide. The leader was confident. Too confident. The kind of arrogance that came from men who'd never failed. The third was quiet. Professional. And somehow, that scared me most. Lorenzo says Corvetti's soft for her, the nervous one said. Says he'll trade himself straight up. Corvetti doesn't trade, the professional one replied. He'll come. But not to negotiate. Then what? To burn everything down looking for her. Silence fell. Even through my terror, I felt something warm bloom in my chest. Massimo was coming. Not because I was useful. Not because I could identify traitors. Because I mattered to him. The van stopped. Rough hands dragged me out into night air that smelled like rust and river water. Warehouse district, just like they'd said. The bag came off my head. I blinked against sudden light, construction lamps illuminating a vast empty space. Concrete floors. High ceilings. Loading docks that opened onto black water. And standing in the center of it all, looking exactly like his photograph but infinitely more dangerous in person, was Lorenzo Corvetti. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Francesca Moretti, the psychology student who became Massimo's weakness. He circled me slowly. Tell me, when did my cousin start caring about anything other than power? I kept my mouth shut, cataloging his tells. The tight grip on his phone. The way he kept glancing at the loading dock doors. The pulse visible in his throat. He was expecting Massimo. And he was afraid. He's probably already on his way, Lorenzo continued. Probably tearing through this city like the animal he is. And when he gets here, you're going to help me end this. I won't. You will. Because if you don't, I'll kill everyone he's ever cared about. Starting with Sofia. Then Carlo. Then his entire household staff. He leaned close. And I'll make him watch each one before I put a bullet in his head. Outside, an engine roared. Then another. Then a sound I'd never forget, an explosion that shook the warehouse walls and shattered windows. Lorenzo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face went white. He's here, he whispered. Dio mio, he's actually here. More explosions. Closer now. Gunfire erupted somewhere outside, automatic weapons, systematic, devastating. Lorenzo grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the loading dock. You're going to tell him to stand down. You're going to. The main door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. And through the smoke and chaos, Massimo Corvetti walked into the warehouse alone. His suit was torn. Blood streaked his face. His eyes burned with something beyond fury, beyond violence. They burned with purpose. Lorenzo. His voice carried across the empty space with absolute finality. Let her go. Or what? Lorenzo pressed a gun to my temple. You'll kill me? I'm your blood, Massimo. Your family. Massimo stopped 10 feet away. And when he spoke again, his voice carried no emotion at all. You stopped being my family the moment you touched her. The standoff lasted 3 heartbeats. Lorenzo's gun pressed against my temple, his hand trembling with adrenaline and fear. Massimo stood perfectly still, a predator calculating angles, odds, the exact moment to strike. You won't shoot her, Massimo said quietly. She's the only leverage keeping you alive. Then we have a problem, don't we, cousin? Lorenzo's voice cracked around the edges. Because I'm willing to die if it means taking you with me. You already made that decision when you hired those men. Massimo took 1 step forward. When you planned to use Francesca against me. When you forgot what family actually means. Family. Lorenzo laughed, bitter and broken. You talk about family like you understand it. You, who built an empire on the bodies of everyone who ever trusted you. You, who turned our name into something people whisper in fear. I gave you everything. You gave me scraps. The gun wavered against my skin. You gave me the illusion of power while you held all of it. Do you know what that's like, Massimo? To live in your shadow? To watch you build everything our fathers dreamed of and know I'll never be anything more than your attack dog. Something shifted in Massimo's expression. Not sympathy, exactly. But understanding. So you decided to take it. By force. I decided to survive. Lorenzo's breathing was ragged now. You were never supposed to live long enough to meet her, you know. The restaurant attack was Plan B. Plan A was 3 months ago. A car accident that would have looked perfectly natural. My blood went cold. 3 months ago. Right when Massimo started requesting my section every Friday. But you survived that too, Lorenzo continued. Because you always survive. Always adapt. Always win. His voice dropped to something raw and desperate. I just wanted one thing that was mine. One victory. One moment where I wasn't standing in your shadow. So you chose war. I chose freedom. Massimo's eyes met mine over Lorenzo's shoulder. And in that glance, I saw everything he was planning. the angle he'd use, the risk he'd take, the split-second timing required. He was going to charge Lorenzo. Use his body to shield me. Take the bullet meant for my head. He was going to die protecting me. No. I'd spent 6 months reading Massimo Corvetti like a language only I could understand. And I knew with absolute certainty, he would sacrifice himself without hesitation. I couldn't let that happen. My psychology training kicked in, not the academic kind, but the survival kind. The kind that taught you to observe patterns in real-time crisis situations. Lorenzo's grip on my arm had loosened as he argued with Massimo. The gun against my temple trembled in rhythm with his breathing, erratic, emotional, distracted. And behind him, through the loading dock entrance, I saw movement. Marco Ricci. He'd escaped during the chaos. Or been released. Either way, he was here, weapon raised, positioning himself behind Massimo with the careful precision of a trained killer. The same man I'd identified in the footage. The betrayer who'd made the call 7 minutes before the restaurant attack. He was aiming for Massimo's blind side. Time fractured into crystalline moments. Marco's finger tightening on the trigger. Lorenzo's attention fixed on Massimo, unaware of the second threat. Massimo's muscles coiling to charge. And me, a waitress turned survivor, a psychology student turned witness, a woman who'd saved this man once and refused to let him die for her. I whispered the words that had started everything. Massimo, don't move. He froze instantly. Absolute trust in those 2 words. And I drove my elbow back into Lorenzo's solar plexus with every ounce of strength I had. The gun fired, wild, unfocused, the bullet singing past Massimo's shoulder. Massimo dropped and spun in the same motion, his weapon materializing like magic. Marco's shot went where Massimo's head had been a heartbeat before. Massimo fired once. Marco collapsed, the surprise frozen on his face even as he fell. Lorenzo tried to raise his gun again, but I kicked it from his hand, my server's balance translating into fighter's precision. Massimo was on him in seconds. No guns now. Just fists and fury, and years of brotherhood turned to betrayal. They crashed into loading equipment, brutal, savage, nothing held back. Lorenzo fought with desperate strength, Massimo with controlled violence. You chose this, Massimo snarled, blocking a punch and countering with devastating force. You chose betrayal over loyalty. Greed over family. I chose myself. Lorenzo spat blood. For once in my miserable life, I chose myself. They grappled, crashed through wooden pallets, both bleeding, both beyond reason. Then Lorenzo's hand found something, a knife, hidden in his boot, glinting in the harsh construction lights. He lunged. Massimo caught his wrist, twisted, but Lorenzo was fighting with the strength of a man with nothing left to lose. The blade inched closer to Massimo's throat. I searched frantically for a weapon, anything. And saw Lorenzo's dropped gun 3 feet away. I'd never fired a weapon in my life. But I'd watched enough behavioral analysis videos, studied enough crisis situations, understood enough about stance and aim, and I grabbed it. Lorenzo. Both men turned. Lorenzo's free hand moved toward his jacket, toward another hidden weapon. Francesca, no, Massimo started. But I saw it in Lorenzo's eyes. The desperate calculation. The final play. He'd rather kill Massimo and die trying than surrender. Some people, my psychology professors had taught me, choose destruction over defeat. Lorenzo was one of them. I didn't fire. Massimo did. 1 shot. Center mass. Final. Lorenzo crumpled, his eyes wide with betrayal and something that looked almost like relief. Massimo. He whispered. I just wanted. I know, Massimo said quietly, kneeling beside his cousin. I know. Then Lorenzo Corvetti died in a warehouse by the water, killed by the only family he had left. The silence that followed was absolute. Rain started falling. I heard it hammering the warehouse roof, washing through the broken windows. The same rain that had been falling the night I'd saved Massimo's life the first time. He rose slowly, covered in blood and dust and the weight of what he'd just done. Our eyes met across the warehouse floor. And then I was moving, dropping the gun, running to him, my hands shaking so badly I could barely stand. He caught me as my legs gave out, his arms wrapping around me with fierce gentleness. You saved me, he murmured into my hair. Again. You saved me again, Francesca. You were going to die for me. My voice broke. You were going to let him shoot you. I would have. Without hesitation. That's insane. That's love. The word hung between us like lightning. Rain poured through the warehouse openings, soaking us both, washing away blood and gunpowder and the last pretense that this was anything other than what it was. I'm a waitress, I whispered. I was nobody. I served you wine. How did we get here? Massimo's hand cupped my face, tilting my head until our eyes locked. You were never nobody, Francesca. You were the woman who saw danger when everyone else saw nothing. Who warned me when you should have stayed silent. Who saved my life twice now. His thumb traced my cheekbone. You were always somebody. I just had the privilege of discovering it. Outside, sirens wailed. His security team would be here soon. Police, the ones on his payroll, would clean this up. The world would keep turning. But in that moment, in that rain-soaked warehouse, covered in the aftermath of violence and survival, something shifted between us. I rose on my toes and kissed him. And Massimo Corvetti, the man who never let anyone close, who trusted no one, who'd built walls around his heart higher than his penthouse, kissed me back like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I owe you everything, he whispered. You owe me a normal life, I said. But I think it's too late for that. Dangerously late. Good. And as his security team stormed the warehouse and rain continued to fall, I realized something profound. I'd walked into La Verita 6 months ago as Francesca Morelli, psychology dropout and part-time waitress. I was walking out of this warehouse as something else entirely. The woman who'd saved a Mafia boss. The woman who'd survived betrayal, kidnapping, and war. The woman who'd chosen love in the middle of violence. And I had no idea who that woman was yet. But I was ready to find out. The penthouse felt different in daylight. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows 3 days after the warehouse, watching the city wake beneath a sky scrubbed clean by days of rain. Somewhere down there, police were filing reports that would lead nowhere. Witnesses were remembering nothing. Security footage was mysteriously corrupted. Francesca Moretti, waitress at La Verita, had called in sick with a migraine and never returned to work. The woman who'd survived a kidnapping, identified traitors, and killed no one but saved everyone, she didn't exist in any official record. Massimo's world had rules. And the first rule was, protect what's yours by erasing what threatens it. I should have been terrified by how efficiently I'd been disappeared. Instead, I felt free. You're awake early. Sophia's voice came from behind me, professional as always despite the hour. She set a coffee cup on the side table, cream, no sugar, exactly how I took it. Massimo's still sleeping. The doctor said he needs rest. How bad are the injuries? Cracked ribs, deep tissue bruising, minor concussion. Nothing permanent. She paused. He's had worse. That shouldn't have been comforting. Somehow it was. Sophia. I turned to face her. The restaurant, La Verita, what happens to them? They lost 2 staff members that night. There was damage, police presence. Compensated. Generously. The owners believe it was a robbery gone wrong. Everyone's been taken care of. Her expression softened almost imperceptibly. Including your former manager, who speaks very highly of your work ethic and is devastated to lose you to a better opportunity in Milan, I believe the story goes. Milan. You've always wanted to travel, apparently. It's a very believable narrative. I laughed despite myself. You've thought of everything. That's my job. She moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Francesca, what you did at the warehouse. Warning him. Saving him. Something flickered in her eyes, respect, maybe even gratitude. Not many people would have had the courage. Or the instinct. I didn't think. I just. Exactly. She smiled, a real one this time. You didn't think. You acted. That's what keeps people like Massimo alive. And that's why you belong here more than you realize. She left me alone with that thought and a cup of perfectly prepared coffee. I found Massimo an hour later in the master bedroom, propped against pillows that probably cost more than my former monthly rent. His torso was wrapped in bandages, bruises blooming purple and yellow across his ribs. But his eyes were clear when they found mine. "You're staring," he said, voice rough with sleep. "You look terrible. I've been told I'm very handsome, actually. By people on your payroll?" His laugh turned into a wince. "Don't make me laugh. It hurts." I crossed to the bed, perching on the edge carefully. "The doctor said you need to rest." "The doctor worries too much." "The doctor is probably right." We sat in comfortable silence, morning light filtering through the windows. Outside, the city hummed with its usual rhythm, millions of people living normal lives, unaware that 3 days ago, a war had been fought in a warehouse by the water. "I tried to stay away from you," Massimo said suddenly, his eyes fixed on something distant. "That first night you served my table, I knew. I knew you were dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "I'm a psychology dropout who can't even properly open a wine bottle without the sommelier judging me." "Dangerous because you saw me. Not the reputation, not the fear, not the carefully constructed image. You saw me." His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. "And I've spent 12 years making sure no one could do that." "Why?" "Because caring about people gets them killed in my world. Because attachments are weaknesses that enemies exploit. Because..." He paused, his grip tightening. "Because I watched my father love my mother so completely that when she died, he followed her within a year. And I swore I'd never give anyone that power over me." "Massimo." "But then you whispered 'don't move' in a restaurant, and suddenly I was terrified. Not of the assassins. Of how much I wanted to hear you say my name again." My throat tightened. "You could have stayed away after that night." "I should have. God knows Sophia told me to." He finally looked at me, and his eyes held everything he was trying to say. "But I kept coming back. Kept requesting your section. Kept finding excuses to see you, talk to you, learn the way you tilted your head when you were analyzing someone. You were studying me. I was falling for you. There's a difference." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with truth and consequence. "I can't go back to my old life," I said quietly. "Even if I wanted to, which I'm not sure I do anymore, it's gone. Erased. I'm a ghost now. You could have a new life. Anywhere you want. New name, new city, new everything. I have the resources. Is that what you want?" He went very still. "What I want is irrelevant. You deserve a choice, Francesca. A real one. Not one made under duress or fear or..." I kissed him. Gentle, careful of his injuries, but firm enough to silence the spiral of noble self-sacrifice I could see building in his eyes. When I pulled back, his expression was stunned. "I'm choosing," I said. "Right now. I'm choosing you. Not your empire, not your world, not the danger or the power or any of it. Just you." Massimo Corvetti, the man who tips 40% and drinks Amarone and checks his watch exactly every 17 minutes. "You timed that." "I time everything. It's a psychology thing." His laugh was soft, wondering. "You're insane." "Probably. But I warned you twice now, and you're still alive. So maybe insane is what you need." He pulled me closer, mindful of his injuries but unable to resist. "What happens now?" "I don't know. I've never done this before, the whole falling in love with a mafia boss thing." "I've never done the falling in love part," he admitted. "I might be terrible at it." "You've been doing okay so far." We stayed like that, wrapped in each other and morning light, while the city continued its oblivious dance below. Eventually we moved to the windows, his arm around my waist, my head against his shoulder, both of us watching rain clouds gather on the horizon. "It's going to rain again," I observed. "Like the night we met. Like the night everything changed." Massimo turned me to face him, his hands framing my face with a gentleness that contradicted everything I'd seen him do in that warehouse. "Francesca Moretti," he said softly. "The woman who saved my life. Twice." I smiled, rising on my toes to whisper against his lips. "Massimo, don't move." But this time, the words were playful. Teasing. A callback to the moment that had started everything, now transformed into something entirely new. His arms tightened around me. "Never again," he murmured. "I'm never letting you go again." And as the first drops of rain began to fall against the windows, washing the city clean, erasing the violence, starting everything fresh, I realized something profound. I'd spent 25 years trying to understand people from a safe distance. Observing, analyzing, never quite participating in the messy, dangerous, beautiful chaos of actually living. But Massimo Corvetti had pulled me into the fire. And instead of burning, I'd learned to dance in the flames. My old life was gone. My name erased. My normal disappeared like smoke. But in its place, I'd found something I'd never expected. Purpose. Passion. Love in its most dangerous form. I was no longer Francesca Moretti, waitress and psychology student. I was Francesca Moretti, the woman who'd whispered "don't move," and changed everything. The woman who belonged to a man who belonged to shadows. The woman who'd chosen love over safety, danger over normal, truth over comfortable lies. And I'd never been more certain of anything in my life. Rain fell. The city breathed. And in Massimo Corvetti's arms, overlooking the world we'd almost died protecting, I finally understood what it meant to be alive. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his voice rumbling against my ear. I smiled against his chest. That I should have spilled wine on you that first night. Would have saved us a lot of trouble. His laugh shook us both. And somewhere in the city below, life continued, normal, ordinary, safe. But we were done with normal. We'd found something better. Don't forget to subscribe to Undiluted Love Stories for more heart-gripping romance, dangerous love, and stories that prove sometimes the most dangerous choice is the one worth making. Hit that notification bell, because love this intense doesn't wait for anyone.